The growl began as a tremor under the crib, a vibration that rattled the slats. When Nora spun, the dog's teeth were inches from her newborn's blanket. She froze, clutching the baby. "Caleb," she whispered, "either he goes or we do." Caleb caught Bear's collar and dragged him back. The dog went rigid, eyes locked on the baby like he'd found an intruder. "Don't make me choose," Caleb said, startlingly calm for someone wrestling a 70-pound dog. "Nora, please. Not again." Not again had the tang of history Nora had never been invited to. Later she'd replay it, the way Bear pressed into him like they were fused. In the moment, all she felt was the tiny heartbeat thudding against her palm and how small she suddenly felt in her own home. Before any of it, there had been quiet. Morning coffee that tasted like hope. The tree outside their window murmuring leaves. Bear sprawled upside down, belly exposed. Caleb had found him at the shelter 2 years ago. A rust-colored tangle the volunteers called a Velcro dog because he leaned into the fence as if he could stick there. Nora liked the image, something wanting to stay. She didn't think about what sticking might look like when life shifted. Before Theo, their nursery held thrifted prints and a rocking chair Caleb rebuilt. The first time Bear nosed into that room, Nora put calm at the top of her miracle list. Bear sniffed the crib and sneezed. Caleb laughed. "Bless you," he said, scratching Bear's ears. "He just knows his family is growing." Bear pressed closer to him, shoulder to thigh, wedging himself into a space he never wanted to leave. There were clues Nora could line up later. The bright red training clicker that lived on the mantel. How Bear never slept on the rug but on Caleb's side of the bed, head wedged under the mattress as if guarding dreams. A small wooden box with a metal clasp in the top of the closet. When she brushed it, packing her hospital bag, Caleb said, "Just paperwork," and changed the subject so smoothly she didn't register she'd been redirected. When Theo came home, the house changed. Not the floors. Nora did. Stitches across her abdomen, tears at random. Bear's nails were louder on the hardwood at night. Caleb held her hand in the hospital, told her she was brave, then slept on the couch with Bear the first night home. "He gets anxious with changes," he said, patting the dog and not looking at her. Nora thought she was generous for not protesting. The first week, Bear's ears pinned back every time Theo wailed. He would plant himself between Nora and the bassinet, eyes flicking from her to the baby to Caleb. Caleb would kneel, click the clicker, and say, "Good boy, stay there." Tossing a treat and guiding Bear's body like an invisible leash was wrapped around the dog's chest. "He's adjusting," Caleb said whenever Nora stiffened in the hallway. "He needs a new job. He'll be fine." The night in the nursery happened at twilight, purple light across the floor. Nora rocked and hummed nonsense to a crying Theo. Bear drifted in not with a dog's loose gait, but like a shadow sliding under a door. He placed himself between the chair and the doorway. Nora stood to reach the remote on the dresser and had to step toward him. He lowered his head and let out a low, shocked sound. Startled, she stumbled and the chair skittered. Theo pitched in her arms, and for one terrible second she saw him split on the floor like porcelain. She curled around him. "Bear!" she shouted. Caleb sprinted in, grabbed Bear's collar, and dragged him back, nails jittering across the wood. "I can't do this," she said, choking. "I cannot raise Theo with a dog who thinks my moving is a threat. Caleb, choose." He flinched. "We can call someone. A trainer. I'll fix it. Please, Nora, give me a week." She wanted the softness of before. "A week," she said, watching Bear as Caleb took him into the hall, the dog's eyes never leaving the baby. The house rearranged itself around Bear in the days that followed. Baby gates went up. Caleb ran protocols. Quiet exposures, he said. Boundaries. He stood between Nora and Bear when she moved rooms, corrected the dog with a calm aha when Bear shadowed too closely. He wore the clicker like a bracelet. Misdirection piled. The pediatrician's waiting room where Bear wasn't there, but Nora still felt eyes on her. Caleb's sister texting, "Can't wait to meet Theo," and Caleb replying, "This week is bad, he's colicky," when Nora hadn't said no. Hooks added to inside doors so Bear can see and won't panic. Every time Theo cried, Bear appeared. Every time Nora shifted the baby, Bear rose like a tide between her and a doorway. "He's picking up your stress," Caleb said. "You have to relax." She wondered if she was the variable souring the equation. The behaviorist, Sienna Lowell, came on a rainy Tuesday. Clipboard, calm face, Bear skittered in a loose circle and landed with his shoulder pressed to Caleb's calf. Sienna's questions untangled gently. How long have you had him? Any prior aggression? How with visitors before the baby? Caleb answered in careful, measured sentences. He avoided the word possessive, used devoted. He's a herding mix, he said, patting Bear once. He needs a job. Sienna watched and arranged them in the hallway. Nora, walk holding the baby. Caleb, stand still. Bear free. Nora hesitated and stepped. Bear instantly placed himself between her and Caleb. Weight forward, tail still. Again, Sienna said. Same outcome. Now, Nora, stand still with the baby. Caleb, you walk. Bear free. Bear slid into the space again, blocking the mother, but escorting the father. This isn't jealousy of the baby, Sienna said. He's guarding Caleb. Specifically Caleb. He sees Caleb as a resource. That's dangerous. Resource guarding of a human can escalate. Caleb's mouth tightened. He's always been like this. He's just loyal. He's been reinforced for it, Sienna said gently. Who rewards him when he blocks? Who tells him to stay there? Nora looked at Caleb. Caleb looked at the floor. He just does it, he said, too fast. They practiced structured drills, Bear on leash, Caleb ignoring, Nora moving. Sienna tossed treats only when Bear looked away from Caleb to Nora. He's smart, Sienna said. Smart makes it easier and harder. After she left, the air felt filled with the word no one said. Culpable. Caleb busied himself with dishes. Nora watched Theo breathe and thought, if I stop, who will start? That night, Nora couldn't sleep. She scrolled photos. Bear's head under Caleb's hand, the baby's fist like a seashell. She opened the baby monitor app and watched a black and white clip from 3 days ago. She'd set the monitor to auto-record motion. She pressed play. The room was empty. Caleb entered, Bear glued to his thigh. Caleb adjusted the monitor, unaware it recorded sound. Block, he murmured. He sidestepped. Bear flowed into the doorway and planted himself. Good, Caleb said, warm. A clicker chirped. Hold, he whispered, and Bear coiled. Good boy, stay there. Nora sat up so fast, the blanket slid off. She watched the clip again and again. The clicker chirped once more in the hall. She closed the app with a trembling thumb. She pulled up the shelter's old emails. Caleb's application, careful grammar. A question, what behaviors do you feel equipped to manage? Answer, separation anxiety, resource guarding. She scrolled to a forwarded attachment, a trainer's card, as we discussed about Milo. Milo? She clicked. The scan read in looping script, Milo, reactivity plus human guarding plan. Call if escalates. The date was 2 years before she met Caleb. The wooden box in the closet pushed at her mind. She lifted it down, fingers on the clasp. Inside, vet records, a faded blue collar, a photo of Caleb with a dog that wasn't Bear, sleek, pale-eyed. On the back, a date and name, Milo, our boy, and initials M and C. Beneath, a folded document, temporary protective order. Not her name. She read twice before the sense arranged itself. A woman, Maris, and Caleb, and a sentence like a knife. Respondent used canine to intimidate and restrict movement of petitioner and minor child. She put the box back as if it could bite. Caleb stood in the doorway, shoulders sloped. His eyes were glassy. I told you not to go through my stuff, he said softly. What is this? The paper shook in her hand. Who is Maris? Milo? What does it mean you used a dog to keep someone from moving? It isn't what you think. How could it be anything else? Bear drifted in and leaned into Caleb. Caleb's hand sank into his ruff. Back then, he said, words coming like a confession forced through a throat, I was with someone. We lived together. She had a little girl. After the baby, I felt like a ghost in my own house. Milo nailed himself to me the way Bear does. It felt good to be chosen. I taught him to block, to keep space around me. I thought it was management. One night Maris tripped. She fell. She said it was because Milo got in her way. Maybe she was right. We argued. She filed the order. I left. I thought if I started over, if I did it right, if I found a dog who connected, I could keep it under control. I didn't tell you because you'd think I'm a monster, and I know that word is waiting in your mouth. It's not a monster, Nora said hoarsely. It's control. It's training a living thing to keep someone away and calling it love. I was trying to protect something, he said. I grew up where nothing was safe. My dad drank. Our dog slept in my room. He calmed me when the screaming started. If a dog was between me and the door, no one crossed it. It rewired me. I wanted loyalty, a family that stayed. You built a wall and called it a family, she said. Now that wall has teeth. Theo whimpered on the monitor. Bear pressed harder into Caleb. Nora straightened. I'm taking Theo to my sister's, she said, steady. Tomorrow we call Sienna and a rescue. You call a therapist. We decide where we can live without doors you need a living bulwark to guard. I can't compete with how chosen this makes you feel. That's not, he started. Don't, she said. Stop. He nodded, a small collapse. Please don't take him away, he whispered, and she didn't know if he meant the baby or the dog. The climax was soft, not shattering. No thrown plates, just the quiet brutality of truth settling. Caleb sat on the bed and cried without sound. Bear licked his hand and whined when Nora lifted Theo. Back, Nora said, a word she had never owned. Bear hesitated, looked at her, moved an inch. She held the pause like a crown. Good, she said to herself. Sienna came back the next day. After Nora told her everything, Sienna closed her eyes briefly. We have to prioritize safety, she said. Bear cannot stay in a home with a newborn during this protocol. Even with perfect management, the pattern's entrenched. I can take him for a few days, assess a foster who knows resource guarding. He's not a bad dog, but this isn't the environment for him. Caleb gripped a chair. He didn't finish. He's a dog who's been taught that guarding you is his job, Sienna said gently. He deserves an easier job. You deserve to be a father without a sentry. Nora deserves to move freely. They packed Bear's things, harness, treats, fraying rope toy. Caleb held the collar like it had held him together. When Sienna clipped the leash, Bear looked between Caleb and the door, devotion flickering in his eyes. I'll make this transition good for him, Sienna said. Bear went out the front door without a sound. After the house inhaled. Not relief, a rebalancing. The silence made space for Theo's small coups that had been overshadowed. The next week arranged itself around new rituals. Caleb moved into the guest room. He made an appointment with a therapist who specialized in postnatal mood disorders in fathers and coercive patterns. He wrote an email to Maris with Sienna's help, not asking for forgiveness, only acknowledging harm. He gave Nora access to accounts and passwords she hadn't had, not because she couldn't handle them, but because she hadn't asked, and he'd let her not ask. They ate separate dinners at first because the scrape of forks felt too intimate. They looped the baby monitor's cord out of reach and placed it somewhere new. Nora turned off auto-record. She didn't need to catch ghosts anymore. Sienna texted updates. Bear was with a trainer who would place him in a kid-free home, with a woman who fostered dogs who loved one person too much. He's decompressing, Sienna wrote. He sleeps. He plays tug. He's learning place, without a human in it. I'm sorry, Caleb said one night. Theo asleep, Nora so tired, the apology slid off and still mattered. I was afraid of being left, so I built a barricade. I called it love because I didn't know the difference between love and control. I'm learning. Nora believed people could learn. She didn't know if they could return to something unbroken. She watched Theo's hand curl around her finger like a delicate anchor and wondered what they'd tell him about the dog in the photos. Months passed in a new pattern. Therapy unearthed artifacts Caleb held to the light. Nights as a boy with his face in the dog's fur to muffle fights, how power and protection braided in his mind. He brought home handouts about consent and boundaries that were maps, not walls. They didn't rush back into sharing a bed. Nora didn't rush into forgiveness. She asked hard questions and sat with answers that made her stomach hurt. He installed a baby gate, then took it down when Nora pointed out it fenced nothing. He stopped checking the monitor every 10 minutes and started listening to Theo's sleepy noises. He made room for Nora's mother to come for the first time since the baby. He didn't reach for a leash that wasn't there. Bear was adopted by a woman named Fiona, who hiked every morning before dawn. Sienna sent a photo. Bear on a rock at sunrise, almost silver, a new collar the color of the sky. He's doing well, the caption said. He checks in with Fiona, then goes back to sniffing. He's learning he can adore someone without policing the world. One Tuesday, Caleb brought home a small box and set it on the table. No big gestures, he said. This is small. You can throw it away or set it on fire. Inside lay the red clicker, chipped. I want you to destroy it, he said. For me, for us, if you want. She looked at the toy tool and felt the weight of what he asked. She stood, walked to the trash, and dropped it in. The sound was ordinary. The meaning felt like space opening where a wall had stood. Theo learned to roll, then crawl. At a doorway, he looked back and beamed, proud of the geography he could cross. Nora put out her hand and let him move toward it without obstacles. Some days she could sit on the floor and let the quiet be quiet. They didn't put a new dog-shaped piece into their family puzzle. Not yet, maybe not ever. They took evening walks as a trio, passing neighbors with leashes and smiles. Sometimes a rust-colored dog bounded past, and Nora's heart did a complicated thing. Caleb glanced at her then, not to ask, but to say he saw it too, that he could feel sadness and not try to fix it with the wrong tools. When Theo finally slept in longer stretches, Nora dreamed of doorways with nothing in them but light. In those dreams, she walked through and turned, and no one blocked her. The air was just air. The moral didn't arrive like a poster. It came like morning, slightly different each time. She learned the danger wasn't the growl. It was the hand that taught the throat to make it. She learned blind spots are secrets we keep from ourselves until someone holds up a mirror and the room shifts into a shape we recognize. Sometimes the monster lives in the rules we teach others to hold for us. And sometimes the most loving thing we can do is dismantle our fortresses, step through the open door, and choose to stand in the same room as the people we love, unguarded, seen.